For 150,000 years they worked in absolute darkness. The Igigi gods descended into the gold mines of ancient Mesopotamia, digging, hauling, breaking their backs for masters who lived in luxury above. They weren't slaves in the way we understand slavery. They were gods themselves, lower-tier deities forced into brutal labour by the Anunnaki, the ruling pantheon who needed gold for reasons the texts only hint at. Then one night they'd had enough. The Igigi threw down their tools, marched to the house of Enlil, the chief god, and set it on fire. What happened next would change the course of human history forever. Because when the smoke cleared and the rebellion was crushed, the Anunnaki had a problem. Who was going to mine gold now? The answer, according to 4,000-year-old Sumerian tablets, was us. If this sounds like ancient astronaut theory, hold on. Because whether you believe these were literal aliens or metaphorical stories, the tablets are real, the translations are verified, and the details are disturbingly specific about genetic engineering, forced labour, and the moment humanity was created, not to thrive, but to serve. Before we go further, if you're fascinated by suppressed history and alternative narratives about human origins, hit that subscribe button. I break down ancient texts, lost civilizations, and the stories mainstream archaeology doesn't want you asking questions about. New videos every week. Now let's go back to the beginning. To understand the Igigi rebellion, you need to understand who the Anunnaki were. According to Sumerian mythology, the Anunnaki were the pantheon of gods who came to Earth long before humans existed. The texts don't say where they came from, only that they arrived and established dominance. Their leader was Anu, the sky god. His sons Enlil and Enki controlled Earth and the waters beneath it. The Anunnaki needed gold, not for jewelry, not for currency. The text suggests they needed it for something functional, something critical to their survival or technology. Some translations hint at atmospheric repair. Others suggest it was used in their ships or settlements. The exact reason is lost to time. But the need was urgent enough that they organized an entire operation around extracting it from Earth. That's where the Igigi come in. The Igigi were another class of gods, younger and lower in the hierarchy. The Anunnaki assigned them brutal work, digging into Earth, mining the gold, hauling it to the surface. The conditions were horrific. The Sumerian poem Atrahasis, one of the oldest surviving texts, describes the Igigi labouring for 40 years without rest. 40 years of endless digging in stifling heat, in darkness, breaking stone with their hands. The tablets describe the mining operation in detail. The Igigi dug canals to drain water from the mines. They carved tunnels deep into mountains. They hauled baskets of earth and ore up from depths that would crush mortal lungs. The work was so demanding that the texts say the Igigi carried the earth in baskets and dug the watercourse until their hands bled and their backs bent under the weight. This wasn't symbolic language. The Sumerians recorded specific tasks, specific tools, specific quotas the Igigi were forced to meet. Imagine being a god and being treated like a mule. That's what the Igigi endured. They weren't mortal. They couldn't die from exhaustion, which meant their suffering didn't end. It just continued day after day, year after year, century after century, for 150,000 years according to the timeline in the tablets. 150,000 years mining gold for masters who never lifted a finger. Finally, they broke. The Atrahasis text describes the moment the rebellion began. It was night. Enlil, chief enforcer of the Anunnaki, was asleep in his house. The Igigi gathered outside. They weren't asking for better conditions. They weren't negotiating. They were done. The text says they set fire to their tools and marched on Enlil's residence, surrounding it and setting it ablaze. Enlil woke to smoke and flames. He panicked. The text describes him sending for other Anunnaki leaders, Anu and Enki, demanding to know who was responsible. The Igigi didn't hide. They stood there and said it plainly. We will not dig anymore. We will not mine anymore. Find someone else. Enlil wanted to crush them. He saw the rebellion as treason, an unforgivable violation of cosmic order. Anu, the sky god and highest authority, considered it too. They debated executing the Igigi leaders as an example, but Enki, the god of wisdom and water, saw a different problem. If they killed the Igigi, who would do the work? If they enslaved them by force, they'd just rebel again. The labour still needed to be done. The gold still needed to be mined. They couldn't let the operation stop. Enki proposed a solution. Create a new species, a worker race. Being strong enough to mine, but not strong enough to rebel. Intelligent enough to follow orders, but not intelligent enough to question them. A species that would live, work, and die without threatening the Anunnaki's control. He proposed creating humans. The tablet describes the moment with shocking clarity. Enki says, "Let us create a primitive worker. He shall bear the yoke. He shall carry the toil of the gods. Not a companion species, not an equal, a biological machine designed to replace the Igigi." The text then describes the process. Enki didn't create humans from nothing. He took something that already existed, a primitive hominid the text calls the beast of the field, and altered it. He mixed the blood of a slain god, one of the Igigi rebels, with the clay of earth. Then he had the goddess Ninmah, the mother goddess, shape the mixture into a form. The divine blood gave the creature intelligence. The clay gave it a body that could endure physical labour. The first human was called Adamu. His name means earthling, or one made from clay. The tablets describe this process with an unsettling level of biological detail. Enki and Ninmah conducted multiple attempts. The first versions had defects. Some couldn't speak, some couldn't hold tools, some were too weak to work. The texts record these failures like lab notes from a genetics experiment. Eventually, they refined the process. They found the right mixture, the right proportions. They created a being that could understand commands, use tools, and survive harsh mind conditions. The Anunnaki called this success. They called it progress. This wasn't a one-time experiment. The Anunnaki needed a workforce, not a prototype. So they created more, male and female. The texts say 7 males and 7 females were shaped in the first batch. They were sterile at first, unable to reproduce. The Anunnaki wanted control over population, but later Enki modified them again, giving them the ability to breed. That decision would cause problems. The new humans were put to work immediately. The Igigi were released from their labour and sent back to the skies, to space stations or orbital platforms the texts described them inhabiting. The humans took their place in the mines. And for a time, the system worked. The gold flowed. The Anunnaki had their resources. The Igigi had their freedom. The humans, having no memory of another existence, simply worked. But humans weren't like the Igigi. Humans were mortal. Humans got tired. Humans bred faster than the Anunnaki anticipated. Within generations, the human population exploded. They spread beyond the mines. They built settlements. They started developing culture. Enlil saw this as a threat. He argued that humans were becoming too numerous, too noisy, too independent. He wanted to wipe them out. The text describes multiple attempts: plague, famine, drought. Then came the flood. The Atrahasis and the later Epic of Gilgamesh both describe a massive deluge sent by Enlil to eradicate humanity. But Enki, who had created humans in the first place, couldn't let them die. He warned a human named Ziusudra, later called Utnapishtim in the Babylonian versions and Noah in the Hebrew Bible. Enki told him to build a boat to save his family and pairs of animals to survive the coming disaster. The text described the flood with apocalyptic intensity. The waters rose for 7 days and 7 nights. Mountains disappeared beneath the waves. Cities were swallowed whole. The screams of drowning humans reached the heavens. Even some Anunnaki regretted what they'd done. The goddess Ishtar wept, lamenting that she had agreed to the destruction, but Enlil remained unmoved. He wanted humanity erased completely, every trace of them gone. The flood came. Most of humanity drowned, but Ziusudra survived. When the waters receded, Enlil was furious that humans had escaped genocide. Enki defended his decision. He argued that humans were too useful to destroy completely. They still needed workers. The compromise was this: humans could live, but their lifespans would be shortened. Before the flood, the texts describe humans living for hundreds or thousands of years. After the flood, their years were capped. Mortality became a control mechanism. So why does this matter? Whether you interpret these texts as literal history, allegory, or evidence of ancient astronaut intervention, the details are unsettling. The Sumerians were the first civilization to develop writing. Their records are the oldest we have, and those records describe human beings as a genetically engineered labor force created to serve a technologically advanced ruling class, not made in the image of a loving creator, made to carry a yoke, made to mine gold. The parallels to modern discussions of automation, artificial intelligence, and the ethics of creating sentient beings for labor are eerie. We're at a point where we can edit genes, where we debate the morality of designing humans for specific traits, where we create machines that might one day become conscious. The Anunnaki faced that choice according to the tablets, and they chose exploitation. Some researchers argue the Sumerian texts aren't mythology at all. Zecharia Sitchin, the controversial author of The 12th Planet, argued that the Anunnaki were extraterrestrials from a planet called Nibiru. He claimed they came to Earth for gold to repair their planet's atmosphere and genetically engineered Homo sapiens by splicing their DNA with that of Homo erectus. Mainstream scholars dismiss Sitchin's translations as inaccurate, but even the academic translations describe genetic manipulation. The details are there, the language is explicit. Enki mixed divine essence with earthly matter. He shaped a worker. He gave it the capacity to think, but not to rule. Here's the question nobody wants to ask. If the Anunnaki created us to mine gold, what does that make us now? The mines are empty. The Anunnaki, if they were real, are gone, but the structures they built, the hierarchies of power, the systems of control, remain here. Humans still work for rulers they never see. We still extract resources for systems we don't control. The Igigi rebelled because they realized they were being exploited. Most humans never do. The Igigi uprising is one of the oldest labor strikes in recorded mythology. It's a story about beings who were told they existed to serve and decided that wasn't good enough. The tragic irony is their rebellion didn't free them. It just outsourced their suffering to a new species. That species was us. And maybe that's the real lesson. The Anunnaki didn't create humans because they valued us. They created us because they needed us, and when you're created to be useful, your value is conditional. The moment you stop being useful, you're expendable. The moment you demand more, you're a threat. The Igigi learned this. Humans are still learning it. The Sumerian texts end with a strange note. After the flood, after humanity's numbers were reduced, the tablets described the Anunnaki retreating. Some left Earth entirely. Others stayed but withdrew from direct rule, allowing humans to govern themselves, to build their own cities, to develop their own kings. But the texts hint that they're still watching, still observing, still waiting to see if the experiment holds. The story of the Igigi and the creation of humans isn't just ancient mythology. It's a blueprint, a warning, a mirror. It shows what happens when power is unequal, when one group controls the labor of another, when beings are created, not for their own sake, but for someone else's gain. The Igigi rebelled. Humanity forgot it was ever enslaved, and that might be the most disturbing part. If you want more deep dives into ancient texts, forbidden archaeology, and the stories that don't make it into textbooks, this channel is for you. Check out the video on screen right now about the Nephilim and the Book of Enoch, another ancient text that describes genetic experiments and fallen angels creating hybrid beings. It connects directly to what we just covered. Click it, watch it, and keep questioning everything you were taught about where we came from.